Hello, Warhammer YouTubers. It's Hooves of Doom again, and this is Hobby Journey May 2016. May's behind us now, and it's just a quick review of my time in the hobby for, I guess, May, and the models I painted and so on and so forth. Now, May I finally started packing up this hobby room, and that was a bit of a kind of a sad moment. Oh man, I was just thinking how often we move, and trying to come up with, I think this is the 10th hobby room that I've had since we've been married. So I guess Colorado will be the 11th hobby room, because I'm sure we'll get a place where I can have something. Looks like there's maybe some good opportunities to have kind of like a basement room. We'll see what we end up with, but it's gonna be a little bit of a rough period. The kind of transition of actually moving down, I'm not really sure. My plan is to keep like a box of models, and what I might do is spray prime them up with the airbrush in the next week or so I have a good portion of models, and maybe like my paint's out and that's about it, and so that I can, if I want, I can paint, but there's not going to be much opportunity to actually play any games or anything like that for probably at least the next couple months. So we shall see, of course. So upcoming videos this next month, I have a lot of kind of topical videos. I did work on these a little while ago, and they've been kind of put on the back burner while I was completing a lot of schoolwork. Thankfully, my school quarters finished like Monday, so that should give me a couple good solid weeks to pack, but also maybe make some good videos. And as I said last month, I really like to do my part 3 to Warhammer and Classics, Demon Part 3, and I have a few other ideas as well. And I did a part 1 of the Q&A in May, so I will do the answer video this month in June. And thank you so much for giving me so many great answers. It was I think a pretty successful Q&A video thus far, even though you've not got any answers. It's really just a video, but that's all right. So thank you. So man, coming up on 1 year of relaunching myself into the hobby and in YouTube, and it's hot. It's June now, and the weather is kind of pretty hot almost every day. This is like an old apartment we're in right now. It doesn't have like air conditioning or anything. It's a little bit rough. Really annoying on the hobby too, because like I'll be painting, and this hobby room's upstairs. That's not helping things. But I'll be painting. I'll put like a blob of paint on like my wet palette of all things, and it would be like dry within like a minute. It's like, this is horrible. I went through like 4 times the amount of paint I did, on a model like a month ago. So that's not so fun. But it's been a good number of weeks. I had a kind of a slow start after I finished the Sisters of the Thorn. I guess that would have been March, April. It really slowed down. I started working on some Ushabti, and those Ushabti took me probably a good 7 or 8 weeks. There was some interruption. I had some family come over, which was great, but it was harder to work on, so I didn't get any painting done that week. There's been a lot of school projects, so things kind of get put off. Just life getting in the way of my hobby. It was just frustrating, right? It's all good. But I did eventually finish the Ushabti late in May, and I immediately started on my next project. So I'm kind of back on the horse, because the minute you finish a project, it's great. You're just kind of like on this like a great high, and you just kind of want to keep pushing. So In some sense, it's better to work on like smaller projects and kind of get them done in stages so that you get that momentum going. So the weather's been really rough. We'll see. You'll see how much I get done throughout the summer. Hopefully, at least summer it's a bit more air conditioned or something, and a little bit easier conditions to kind of paint some models. So I started this year with the hope and the aspiration to paint more models than I buy, and I had a good month in March. A lot of Tomb Kings got painted, but I'm completely off like the wagon or whatever at this point. Part of it is I bought Overkill, and I got Silver Tower, and that's like 100 models right there. So right now, I've bought way more than I've painted. It's like 250 models. I'm about 100 models behind, and which is a little bit disappointing. It's still still a long way between now and January, so we'll see what I can kind of push through. I am working on Imperial Guard now, and there's a pretty big infantry component of that, and I'm going to start working on Empire as well. Empire is supposed to be the project after the Imperial Guard. But both of those are heavy infantry, a lot of kind of average models. So if I can get those finished without buying an enormous amount between now and when those are finished, I should be actually probably well ahead, because there's like 150 Cadians and probably about 50, probably like 70 or so Empire troops. So if I can do that, then I'll actually be, in a decent position to paint more than what I buy, which is always the goal, I think, at this point. I've actually been thinking I should stagger the projects. The idea of my hobby system was to complete one project and then move on to the next. But the idea of painting like 100 and 150 Cadian infantry doesn't sound too appealing in one giant batch. So I might stagger them. I might work on both projects simultaneously. It's a little bit of a problem because Empire and Imperial Guard are basically the equivalent of each other in the two game systems. So I mean, whether you're painting guardsmen or Empire handgunners, there's not an enormous amount of variation, I guess, in like the model itself. But there will be different colors and things like that. So I think it still would be useful. And the good thing with that is I might actually get to roll my charts a little bit sooner, which so I think that would be fun, because I want to know what I'm going to be doing after these two. So I'll be looking forward to potentially doing that. So yeah, let's see here. Extra rolls. Oh yeah, the extra rolls on my charts. Yeah, that's what I just talked about. Anyways, I need to write better notes. So let's just take a look, I guess, at what I painted this month, and we'll see from there. So first up, I painted 6 used Shabti, and like I said, these took a long time. Now, I haven't heard back from like the PMP. There hasn't been a review yet of the models from May. But I think these are pretty good myself. I did more work on the basing than I did throughout the Tomb King army. Added some grass, I added some rocks from the driveway. It just kind of adds quite actually a lot of... it makes the bases look much better. And so, I don't know, I might go back and maybe add a few extra details to like the current Tomb King's army, just to kind of give them that last little bit of polish. I won't be able to do that for, a month or so, I guess, but I think that might be something to do. So these were the first fine cast models that I've actually really worked with. Definitely some problems with the molding on some of the components. As part of the feedback I received on the other Tomb Keen models is to not focus on the gold. Don't use any other type of metallics. So I didn't incorporate any steel or anything like that. They're just pure gold. I also added a little bit more of a gold highlight to them, and than I did on the other, like the Tomb Guard. And I think they ultimately came out pretty well. After spending so long on them, I just kind of wanted to get them finished because you want to drag your heels, and of course I'm always trying to get models finished. So and when those were finished, I moved on to High Queen Khalida, and I think I painted her in about a couple days. So she was a pretty quick kind of project in comparison to like the number of weeks I spent on the Ushabti. So I applied most of the same types of concepts on Queen Khalida as the rest of the armies, so that kind of has a more unifying look. I used kind of like gloss varnish on like the snake, and there's snakes up and down her arms and down one of her legs as well. So I used that as well. I like the model. I think it's pretty decent. I know Vince has painted like 3 or 4 of these models, and certainly you do a much better job than I did, but I'm fairly happy with the way she looks. My one concern or contention that I would say is that the blue highlight is far too stark. It actually has 2 blue highlights, and the second just got really overdid the final one, and the second one is really not even really noticeable. So a little bit too heavy-handed. That type of highlight's something I've been toying around with. The good thing is that I can kind of look at a lot of my models and say, well, this is where I need to kind of improve. And so that's good to at least acknowledge. I think when you first start painting, you're thinking, I don't know how to do any better, but I know it doesn't look good. Right? That's like the first stage people get to. Whereas at this point, I can kind of say, well, this is where I want to do better at. I can kind of recognize, and I know how to do it in principle. I just need to kind of practice a little bit more. So after that, I got to the Imperial Guard, and like I said, we'll see how many of these I'm going to actually get through before I switch to maybe some Empire troops or spice it up, because I do have a lot of guardsmen to paint. These are 10 conscripts. That's why they have the white stripe down their helmet, because they used to be called in Eye of Terror Codex the White Shield. It was kind of like a platoon of youths, which was awesome. But now they're just conscripts. But I'll probably still call them like the White Platoon or something. So this is 10 models. There's 45 in the unit. So there's 35 more to go. And I started batch painting all 45. And I was like, this is ridiculous. So I stopped, and I think I'm just going to do, blocks of 10 and actually get them finished. And like I said, you kind of build that momentum rather than working on 45 for 2 months or something and just, I don't have a lot of hair left as it is, so I don't want to lose what the little I have. So I think for these, the 2 comments that I have received thus far is that they should have some sort of difference between like the white stripe and the green helmet, like another line highlight. So like their armor does have a very fine edge highlight, and I'll probably apply that as well. And that was actually one of the things that I was wondering about these models, because looking at them I was like, man, how do I make the line not stand out as just like a white, painted stripe? So I think that is probably the best way to do it. So I'll probably be adding that on going forward when I complete other models. So again, with these, I did a little bit more basing work than I have previously done. Added again some rocks from the driveway. This time I used Sterling Mud. It's one of the texture paints that Games Workshop does, and I wanted to do more variations in bases. So if I did like in a different Imperial Guard, I'd probably use like a more urban base. Cadians usually have some sort of grass on them. So, and even how I did the grass is a little bit different than what I have been doing it. I think it came out better than, say, like the grass on my Slaanesh demon bases. So even something as very simple as like putting flock on, you can somewhat improve, which is kind of ironic because you think it's so basic. As a final thing, they should have some sort of shoulder marking because they look a bit drab. Vince kind of pointed out that they should have something on their shoulder. And I was looking at the Imperial Guard Codex. I think they all have decals. And I have a big stack of decals. So I'm sure I can find something to put on their shoulders and do them up so that they have a little bit more like a squad markings and things like that. But the good thing about this is that these are the first 40K models that I've painted in probably about 15 years. And so this was a lot of fun. It's nice to finally get to 40K and paint a little bit of that. And I think they look really good. I mean, they're way better than my first Space Marine army I did. Looking back at that, really horrible. These I think actually look pretty good. So I followed the Games Workshop tutorial actually for these. It's actually a lot of steps for just a regular old guardsman, but I think I'm fairly happy with them. These models, like I said, I bought most of these Imperial Guard around 2003, so it's great to finally get back to them. And as one final little note on the painting of these, the GW tutorial doesn't do eyes. It just kind of, it's something, it's that extra little step that's actually, it's easy to get wrong. It's not 100% necessary, but the tutorial doesn't do it. But if you look in the codex, they all have, painted eyes. And so I actually finished them without the eyes and then said, I'm going to, spend the extra time. And it doesn't take much time to actually go back and do it. Painting eyes is always difficult. Some of them look like they're a little bit cross-eyed. But I think in the end, if I can get 150 of these guys up to this standard, I'll be very happy. So thanks for tuning in for the hobby journey, and we'll see you again at the end of June. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a good one.